Everywhere I look, everyone seems to be focusing on what's wrong with the world.
Two shooters were initially believed involved in the mass shooting.
ISIS has now claimed responsibility for today's deadly terror attack.
Initially reported as a 7.9 quake, it was upgraded.
The worst outbreak of the deadly Ebola virus. Police believe the attack may have been a hate crime.
On this podcast, we choose to focus on the good.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Many times when it appears that something is happening to you, it is always, always happening for you.
Because I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Every single one of us makes a difference every single day.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Welcome back to another episode of the Focus on the Good podcast. I am so excited that you are here with me today and that you are back and ready for today's episode with the one and only Jeff Yalden. Jeff is an absolute legend in the youth motivational speaker world. Over the last 23 years, he has been one of the top motivational speakers throughout the entire world. He has spoken in all 50 states, 48 countries worldwide, and has touched the lives of millions of teenagers all over the world. Recently, Jeff retired from full-time speaking, and today in this interview, we talk about what he learned over the last 23 years. Now, during parts of this interview, it might seem that this interview is a little bit different than some of the other interviews I've done for this podcast, and that's because he talks about some things that he wishes he would have done differently. But what I want to make clear is that the focus on the good philosophy is not about looking back and just saying that everything was great. It's about looking back and saying, what can I gain from this situation? What can I learn from this situation? And Jeff talks about a lot of things that he wishes he would have done differently, or that he would have done differently if he had the opportunity to do them again. And because of that, he learned from those situations and learned a lot about life. So throughout this interview, think about what you can learn from Jeff's experiences. He says some amazing things in this interview. Whether you're a speaker or not, you are going to get incredible value out of this and really cause you to examine your life, examine what matters most to you, and decide how to put what matters most to you first. So let's jump right into this interview with Jeff Yalden. I am here with the one and only Jeff Yalden. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jake. I'm excited to be here with you tonight.
Thank you very much. And before we get started, I just want to say that from being a youth speaker as well, you're someone I've looked up to for years, from seeing from afar, and also your personal advice to me. And I just want to say thank you for the difference you've made in the lives of many people, but me included. So thank you for that.
Well, Jake, I'm honored. It's been 23 years of learning from the best, and then just giving my heart back to many people, whether it be my successes or my failures. I've always been very honored and happy to teach the lessons that I've learned.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed about you is that you're an open book, and for all of us who look up to you, that's something that I value a lot. That you don't just share the successes, but you share the hard times as well.
I think in this industry you have to be authentic, and I think too many times, even though we're professional speakers, we claim to have the best stories and the best advice. I've just really taken a different approach. I'm real in my struggles. I'm also real in my successes, and being an open book. You have two types of people: those that want to continue to bash you, and you have those that are like, wow, gee, thank you. Someone that understands me and someone that's going through some of the things that I might be going through. So that's just how I've kind of lived my life, and I'm not afraid to share that.
Yeah. Now, one thing you mentioned there was some people are just going to want to bash you. How do you deal with that? That's something that's going to happen no matter what. How have you dealt with that?
I'd like to sit here and tell you how I've dealt with it successfully, but I think the reality is I don't know if any of us really deal with it successfully. I've come to learn through my work in my own journey that, that could be someone else's issue, not mine, whether it come from jealousy or insecurity. But I deal with it one day at a time. If there's reason that someone might be bashing me, I want to know why. Can I fix it? Did I do something wrong, which is definitely possible. I've made some mistakes in my past. I'm not perfect. But for the most part, Jake, I think with anybody out there, if you're trying to live an authentic life and your motivation is pure, then I think we need to just give forgiveness and we need to accept it. Not everyone's going to like you, but one of the other things that I also say is in life, especially with social media and cyber media today, there will be people for whatever reason that don't like you. And you have to accept that. And people are going to talk about you, trash you, ridicule you, put you down, beat you down. You have to be willing to accept that. And I think that takes a lot of courage. And if you're willing to accept that, I think you also need to go out there with the same willingness and be awesome.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, especially saying sometimes there is something real, and if there is, you need to address that. But if it's just us, anyone in any industry or any pursuit, it's so easy to have that moment. I know that I have, where I've had a standing ovation from an audience, and yet one person says something that they didn't like, or there was one person who was texting on their phone the whole time, but yet everyone else loved it, but all I'm thinking about is that one person.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I think I think everybody has those same thoughts. You know where my success in speaking changed is the moment I stopped giving a shit. And, because some people, for whatever reason, someone's going to be on their cell phone. You know what, Jake? It might not even be because of you. They could be having an emergency at home. But sometimes we look at that like, whoa, I'm speaking and you're on your cell phone? You mean I just flew 8 hours to get here and I'm giving up my family and you're on your cell phone? You know what? Stop. It's not about you. It's about the audience and what you can bring to them. So when I say that I stopped caring, I don't mean it that I don't care about my audience. I stopped caring so much about what people were going to think of me, and I started caring more about giving my heart in that moment, about being present, authentic, and real. And for whatever reason, not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay. That is really okay. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to still give my best. If there's 800 kids in the audience and 750 like you, focus on that.
Absolutely. That's what this whole show is about focusing on the good things that are going on, and I love that.
I think also it's also about maturity too. I'm 45. I think I'm a better speaker now than I ever have been. Because now it's not, well, is the sound system perfect? What about the lights? How were the kids seated? Were all my reservations taken care of? Now it's really my maturity that before I even go in, I pray that God is with me in my heart to make sure that I'm present, I'm delivering, I'm real, my heart is with them. And then I just go in there, and it's not how do I look, am I fat, am I skinny, am I funny, am I... You know what? I want to be there as like a father figure or a teacher in the moment to deliver my best. So that long after the lights are out, the auditorium is vacant, I want people down the road to say, remember that guy that said whatever it is? That's why we do what we do.
So for you, you're saying that really the best way to deal with that is it is taking it away from you and more focusing on serving those around you.
Jake, I think so. That this is not in the very beginning, I wanted to make. I remember it was 60,000 a year. I was wondering, could I make 60,000 a year doing this? Then it was like, can I make 100,000 a year? Then it was, wow, I can buy my own airplane. I can have my own motorhome. I could travel to different countries, and wow, I get paid X to deliver this. Jake, I went about it all wrong for so many years. And I think I'm dealing with it now. It really was never about me, but I think I made it about me. Although I'm semi-retired now, I'm having more fun in the teachable moment that I'm creating, because I think I've come to realize why I'm there. Let me tell you something. No matter how successful you are, how much money you're making, how great your career is, how many phone calls and emails you're getting every day, you got to remember that something is going to happen. And it happens to everybody, that your career can close in a day. And that happened to me. But I always knew that moment could happen someday, whether it be a plane crash, a car accident. For me, it was an injury during CrossFit. And as hard as that moment was for me to go through, it was also probably the best thing I've ever had happen to me in my life.
Wow. And why would you say that is?
I think I learned about what's important. I noticed that for many years, my relationships were kind of shallow. And you know what it's like. You're on the plane, you're in a rent-a-car, you get to a hotel, you speak, it's all about you, and then you rush to leave to get to the airport to return the rent-a-car to fly off to another city. I mean, there were times when I was on the road 130, 140 days a year, 5 days a week. Sometimes, I've had times I've been on the road for 20, 24 days in a row, speaking. And, for me now, I want to be who I am, not on a big scale, but just in a community now. I want to work my community. I want to work with people. I want to really take care of some of the meaningful relationships in my life, because I felt like I've been missing from them, because I was more concerned about making money and having, the big things. So maybe someone can say, oh, wow, he's successful. Look at the house he lives in, or the car he drives, or I'm going to go up in Jeff's plane today. Jake, I live in a modest home now. I still have my Corvette and my jacked up pickup truck, but I got myself put in a financial position that finally it's not a stress to where I have to make a lot of money to maintain the style of living. Whereas I'm just happy waking up every day and focusing on the little things that are important. And I kind of wish all these lessons that I've come to learn I had shared when I was younger, but that's what's so great about the journey of life. And now I'm privileged to be able to share these lessons from the stage now in a much more humble manner.
That is really cool. You get to learn from every stage of life, and even someone like you who's had so much experience being the guru, being the speaker, being the person in front of the thousands of people. You're learning from those experiences as you go as well.
And I think that's what makes us continue to be successful in a way. You're not afraid to share the things that you learn, because ultimately when you're speaking to your audience, you want them to be successful. You want them to grow and be happy. You want them to live a fulfilling life. Well, if you can't teach them those basic principles, then what kind of inspiration or motivation or teacher are you to them? Yeah, you can stand up and talk about leadership. Yeah, you can stand up and talk about goal setting and motivation. But if you can't really deliver from the lessons you've learned, I really don't think you're delivering in a very successful manner, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Now, for someone who doesn't know you, what is the core of your message?
Probably self-respect, probably valuing yourself and knowing that for whatever reason, not everybody will like you. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't like yourself. I think the other part is we spend a lot of time judging people based on the 5% we know about them, yet we don't want people to judge us. Why are we judging people? And I think lastly, learn to forgive as quickly as you do judge. Let's get rid of the things that are painful in our heart. Let's get rid of the things that we have no control over but cause us anxiety and emotional distress. And let's learn to, I do a lot of meditating. It just, for me, with my anxiety, people that don't know me, I'm diagnosed with PTSD. I'm diagnosed with bipolar type 2. I suffer from depression and anxiety. Life for me is a struggle almost every day. And it's more of a struggle today than it really ever has been. And so one of the things that I've come to learn to do, and this is basically from the book by Hal Elrod, The Miracle Morning.
Wonderful
is
book.
I meditate. Unbelievable. As simple as it is, it's just so profound and life-changing. I breathe in peace and I just exhale love. And, I'm 6'1", 300 pounds. I'm a biker and a golfer, but yet I spend time breathing to just, let go, love, and give love out to the world. So, what is the core of my message? There's so many meaning. There's so many stories in my big story that I share that, to be honest with you, I don't know what people walk away with. I know they walk away kind of like, wow, but I hope I make them think.
And I know that particularly is a part of your message, to take time to think. How did that come about? I know that taking time to think is something you talk a lot about. How did that become something that was a part of your message?
Yeah, I think two things I think are really important that I've always shared. Number one, your attitude, and number two, the choices you make. And I remember when I was young, my brother used to always say, why don't you just stop and think before you talk?
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's really important for kids. We're vulnerable. We want to be accepted. And sometimes we're willing to put away what's right for what other people might be doing. And then you come to find out later, you know what, I probably shouldn't have done that. So the take time to think kind of appeared probably in the early 90s or something. And I was just like, stop and think before you say that. Stop and think before you do that. Stop and think before your friends do something and you're like, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. So it's, the take time to think has been pretty successful. And I got the bracelet that says take time to think, that I can't even imagine to tell you how many I've sold over the years.
That's really cool. Over 23 years, I know we learn so much. I know I learn more when I speak to an audience than probably they do. How has your message changed and evolved from 23 years ago to today?
Oh, great question. I was telling someone this. I was in Minnesota, Iowa, doing a suicide program, bringing the community back after a ninth grader committed suicide. About 5-7 years ago, I would never have talked about my mental health because I know that I wouldn't be hired. Because as a speaker, they want you to be this person and perfect. Well, after I developed my reputation and people knew my name and my marketing was great, I became more authentic and real, and I started sharing what was more in my heart. Some people share their faith with God. For me, it was really sharing my mental health because I started seeing a greater problem with that. Jake, I think it's kind of hurt my career a little bit too. But I also think it made my career much more successful. I'm not speaking as much, but the times I am speaking, I'm able to charge more, and I'm more, I think I'm making more of an impact because I'm so present and emotionally there in the moment. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now, I know that sometimes to have the right audience or the right, attract the right people, you have to not be afraid to push away the wrong people.
It's great that you say that, and I think there's definitely so much truth to that. I was talking to Josh Shipp one time, and I think everybody knows who Josh Shipp is. And Josh made a comment that kind of really hit me. Said, "It's great when you can learn to say no." And I think there's a lot of success in that comment, because for many of us, we want to be the successful speaker. And what does that mean? Well, it means that I'm booked every week, 2, 3, 4 days a week. I think the successful speaker is one that really delivers a good message. I think a successful speaker is one that is successful by their own definition, not someone else's definition. So what I would want to encourage people, like you're young, you've got, your wife, stop focusing on making all this money and speaking 4 days a week, and start focusing more on not having to travel 2 days to get where you got to go. Start focusing on, geographical bookings, or, raise your fee to a point where you want to make X amount of dollars and divide that by X amount of speaking engagements. And that's how many you need to do. I think another thing too, when there are important dates, your wife's birthday, Valentine's Day, whether it be if your wife has vacation or there's a holiday coming out, mark an X on those dates. And for no reason will you compromise what is important, and that's taking those days off.
Oh, absolutely. You're speaking my language. For me, my wife is way above any career aspiration, and she's the one that matters the most. So I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I'm glad to hear someone is, because, Jake, and to any of the other speakers that are listening to this, I didn't do that. I'm going to say I didn't do that all the time. I wish I was better, but I've come to realize I've spent more time motivating and inspiring communities and teenagers than I did giving back to my own family, my wife and my kids. And, again, it's a lesson I've learned. I'm 45. I still have a lot of great life to live and relationships to make better and improve and cultivate. But I've had to, and I'm not going to say it's all me, but I think the successful person, when something is not right in their life or a mistake has been making, they look at themselves in the mirror and say, what could I have done better? And I think that's where I'm trying to come from is, what could I have done better? So definitely learn to say no, and set your schedule according to your terms, not anyone else's terms.
That's such a great piece of advice. And how would you, now there's just because I am a speaker, I have a lot of speaker friends and connections that will be listening to this, but there's also a lot of people who are not. And how would you take that same lesson and share that with someone who's in a different profession?
That's another great question. I think most people have to learn on their own. Balance goals and priorities in your life, not just in terms of financial success. And unfortunately, we measure our happiness and our life's purpose sometimes based on how successful we are in terms of how much we earn. I think in any profession you're in, one, live below your means. You don't need to drive a $70,000 car. You don't even need to drive a brand new car. Find out what's important to you, your significant other, your children, and be able to make ends meet but be able to really enjoy the things that you find important. I don't care what profession it is. And, if you're a doctor or you're a lawyer or an engineer and you're making X amount of money, sometimes we try and live according to the money that we make, and we want to keep up with our neighbors. But the reality is your needs and wants are very different than someone else's. So judge your success based on what your close circle, your family finds important. I don't know if I answered that right, but
absolutely. It's
what do you value?
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed is whenever I talk to people who I respect their success, the real successful people, almost always they talk about the importance of balance and putting the first things first. So I think that's really cool that you shared that.
Absolutely. It's like a quadrant, what's important now, what's important, but it might not be now, and what's important to your family, having balance and purpose. And I think one of the questions you have to ask yourself, what do you value?
Yeah, definitely. What matters to you, and that's going to be different to every person. One thing that I say a lot is I think that any person can obtain anything that they want. It just depends on what are you willing to sacrifice for it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so sometimes it means that you can't. There's some things that you want that maybe you can't obtain because it would require you to sacrifice something you care about more. So knowing what you want, it has to be the first step.
Right.
Let's go back to really the origin story of Jeff Yalden. What made you decide to become a speaker, and how did you get into this?
Well, I was, I'm not going to say I was a misdirected kid. I wasn't a motivated kid when it comes down to academics and all that. That's just, I love sports. I moved from New York to New Hampshire my junior year of high school. So I was kind of lost in my search for meaning in life. I think when I graduated from high school and I didn't know what I was going to do, I joined the Marine Corps based on, I tell the story in my speaking. I was in a relationship. I didn't value myself. Ended up getting pregnant. So we got married. I had my first daughter at 18. I joined the Marine Corps at 19 years old. My daughter was born at 20. I went to the Gulf War. At 21 years old, I returned. At 22 years old, I had my second daughter. And at 23 years old, I lost everything. But I started speaking when I was in the Marine Corps. I remember I was a training NCO of 6 Marines, and we got a phone call from a school wanting someone to come and talk to the junior ROTC students. So, oh, yeah, I'd like to do that. And I met a lieutenant colonel, and so I started volunteering a lot of my time, going back to work with these young junior ROTC students, talking about the Marine Corps. And when I got out of the Marine Corps then, I wanted to be a teacher. And so I was working up at Hollis, New Hampshire, at Hollis Brookline High School. I was a full-time substitute teacher. I coached varsity basketball and soccer. And I loved working with the athletes. And we won a state championship my first year. And I remember one of the kids saying at our banquet night, said, "Coach, one of the greatest things about you being our coach is that it wasn't always about basketball, but every lesson was about life." And it's like you used basketball as the tool to teach us. And that's kind of where it started. And then I just, I wanted to speak, and I started marketing myself, and that's it. That's really the journey in short.
Wow, that's cool. It's always cool when it comes out of you just found it and you loved it and it was really who you were and it took it from there. So I think that's awesome and authentic to who you are.
Yeah, it was a great 20 years, and I'm proud to be and I say I'm semi-retired, meaning that I'm not doing it full time. I'm really focusing on other areas of my life, but I am still working in the industry every day. I get phone calls every day. I get emails every day. I got another speaker that I give all my speaking engagements to, and I get 20%. So it's nice to check my mail every day and get a free 20%.
Of course.
It turns out to be a lot of money every month, actually. And, I do a lot more with the mental health and the teen suicide. So I was able to double my fee and invest myself in the more meaningful and full day programs where I get to do, a couple high school assemblies. I get to do a suicide prevention for teachers, and then I get to spend the evening with the community coming out at night. So I'm enjoying that. If I'm doing 1, 2, or 3 a month, it's been very gratifying.
That's really cool. Now, something I've thought about that you may or may not have even thought of, but with the schedule that you have had and over 23 years of speaking, I would bet that there are very few, if not anyone, who has spoken live to as many teenagers that you have. And
I think there'll be people that would argue that, but
there might be, but very few.
I've got, I've got 4.7 million miles with American and U.S. Air.
Wow.
So unless you can show me that you've got that many miles with another airline, but Jake, there was a time when that was impressive. Now I would say that was stupid. Is it worth a marriage? Is it worth the teachable moments when your kids are young? Was it worth the first goal in soccer? Was it worth the dance recital? It was. I was dysfunctional. I was ego driven, and but I don't have any regrets. I made mistakes, and I think it really brought me to who I am today. And it's every day is an education.
Wow, I love that.
Every day we learn.
I love that authenticity. Over 23 years of speaking to teenagers from all over the world, what are some of the greatest moments, some of the best moments that you remember?
I don't even think I can talk about that without crying. Because I think some of the greatest moments are also the most sad. I can tell you a number of stories. Jake, there's just so many stories. I'm thinking about one community had 9 suicides in 1 year, including 4 in 6 weeks. In that same community, I was working with the guidance counselor and this one particular student. And the guidance counselor happened to be the football coach as well. And this player had gotten kicked off the football team. Well, this one particular student was suicidal because his best friend was one of the 9 that committed suicide. Make a long story short, we were in the office talking to him, and we were talking about how he has a gun in the house. And I asked the question, and I found out that he was suicidal, and the guidance counselor asked me what I thought, and I said, well, I think we need to call his mom. I think we need to go to the house, and I think we need to remove the gun. And so when we went back to talk to the student agreed that would probably be a good idea. And so myself, the guidance counselor, and the school resource officer, with the principal and superintendent's permission, we met mom back at the house. We removed the gun, and they took it into the police department. And I'm still in touch with the boy today. And so to make a long story short, back in October of this month, of this past year, 2015, I'm on my way to meet that guidance counselor and 3 other prominent people in the community. I was going to meet them in South Carolina for the Clemson Notre Dame game. And on my way there, I got a phone call that their plane crashed and the 3 of them died. It just kind of really breaks your heart when you know that you worked so hard with this guy and you saved a child's life, but then this guy died. So when you talk about stories, that's just one of them. I've actually gone with a kid and pulled down a rope out of a tree. Jake, you do these programs when you focus on teen suicide, and you've seen and heard it all. It's just, at 45 years old, you start to think, what's important in life, titles or testimonies? You could have all the titles in the world: greatest youth speaker, greatest motivational speaker, certified speaking professional, Hall of Fame speaker. Or do you want a testimony where someone remembers something you may have said that may have changed their life or something? Or a year, 2 years later, after being in the community, you've got 170 of these people still on Facebook talking about the time you went there and the difference that you made, and they still keep you informed of what's going on in the community. So, I think I've got so many great memories of little things, relationships that I've made. It's been pretty unbelievable. It's been pretty unbelievable.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate your authenticity and being willing to share and being open. What an incredible and difficult story that is. And I just think that who you are has helped so many people, and you being real and you being authentic, because that's what touches people.
Yeah, but I caution people to, make sure that you're healthy enough, and before you take care of other people, you first are taking care of yourself. And as much as you give from your heart every day, make sure that when you come home, you have something that's given you fulfillment and love, because there comes a time when your tank runs empty. And if you can't fill it up, and I think it's one of the things what I'm trying to really work on in my retirement. I'm trying to find those things that I love doing: golfing, working out, and just going for walks, or, the little things like laughing. Just those are things that in all the work I've done, I have become, I think, hardened in a way that I don't laugh nearly as much. And as much as I'm supposed to be laughing, I find myself crying. So, as great as the 23 years have been, I think there's also become a part that's kind of hurt me. And I don't look at it as it hurting me as much as I do, I get it. That's what's important. So, Jake, I'm learning every day, and I have never liked being that speaker that people expect you to be that role model for young people. I've always, hey, this is me. I'm not perfect. But I tell you what, I'm going to share a message that's going to change your life. And, not everybody likes that, because not everybody likes to feel emotion. And I've just always been a very emotional guy.
Yeah. Not everyone's going to like it when you say it the way it really is. With your work, specifically with the kind of topics you deal with, I know that you see a lot of adversity going on in people's lives. How does someone get through adversity, whatever that is?
It's going to be okay. I have, that's always been my message. And some people can look at you and say, you don't understand. And you know what? Me, you, anybody can turn around and say, I do understand. Because we've dealt with whatever in our lives, whether it be a financial challenge, abuse, stress, parents' divorce. Maybe we lost someone in 9/11, or just look at our country when September 11th happened. America was destroyed. The eagle shed a tear. But now you look at us 15 years later, and you know what? We are okay. So no matter what you're going through in life, you know, you get knocked down. What do? You get back up. And the same message that we learned when we were 2 years old is the same message that we need to apply into our adulthood. You have a little adversity in your life. You know what? You get back up. It's going to be okay. This too shall pass.
That is awesome. I love that. And just I just feel that warm, good feeling, just as you said, it's going to be okay. And I think everyone needs to hear that from time to time, because in the moment, it doesn't feel like it, but it's true. It will pass.
Yeah, but I think the other thing too, Jake, is you got to make sure that you're taking responsibility. You know, let's not blame whatever circumstance you're going through on other people. Sure, maybe my divorce was because of my wife or something, but you know what? Look in the mirror and say, what could you have done differently? And I think that's what's really important is ask better questions, take responsibility. Don't blame it on somebody else or some other circumstance. You know, I think that's really, really important too. And when you do that, remember, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, we always need to look in the mirror and make sure that we're taking care of what we're doing as well. Now, Jeff, I want to respect your time. I just have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
These are some questions I ask everyone. And the first one is, this podcast is all about focusing on the good. What's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. So why do you think it's important to have a positive attitude, to look for the good in the world and look for the good within your life? Why do you think that matters?
Oh, gosh. Because that's the life you want to live. You know, you have a choice every day when you wake up. You can be negative and you can bitch and complain about this or bitch and complain about that. Or you can just wake up and take a breath and say, wow, what a beautiful day. And I apologize for the language, but I'm standing outside right now in South Carolina. It's about 70 degrees and it's dark, and I'm looking at my neighbor's truck and I'm like, wow, that's a nice color red. You know, the simple fact that we're given eyes that can decipher such an incredible, strong color between green, red, a house, light, you know, or just the fact that you have family, your kids or your wife, and you guys are on the same page. And you're like, you know what? That's my partner in life, man. So, in short, just to answer your question, you're either living or dying, and I want to choose to live every day.
I love that. Perfect. I love that. Now the next one is,
and you also want to, in choosing to live, you also want to choose to see the best in other people too, because those people are a part of your life, and you know, you want happiness, you want to be grateful, and you want to have love in your heart. Yeah, good question, Jake.
I love it. Thank you. I really appreciate your answer. You know, a lot of people have a good idea about what they want, but they have no idea how to get there. What's your best advice for someone who's trying to achieve a goal?
Write it down and answer the why question. Why is this goal important to you? And you got to be really specific about it. And I think you have to write it down. I think you have to keep it by your bedside. You know what? Even make a poster board of it. Like, why is this goal important? Why do you want it? What does it mean to achieve it? So Jake, I'm following your journey a little bit with DDP yoga.
Yeah.
And you look at the weight loss, and you got to find out, well, why is it that we want to lose 10 pounds? What does losing 10 pounds mean to you? You know, what is this going to cost you if you don't lose it versus what is this going to do to you if you do lose it? So I think, you know, set goals, read them, have a why, and go after it.
That's it. You're speaking exactly my language, because the why, I always tell people that the why is what matters so much. And you mentioned me and losing, you know, it's been 50 pounds now. And first of all, it feels amazing to be 50 pounds lighter than I used to be, but also it's only happened because I think about my why way more often than I think about my how.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the last question here is, what do you think that an everyday person can do to make a positive impact in the world around them?
Have a purpose that is bigger than you. Have a purpose every day that is just bigger than what makes you happy. Give love to your neighbors, give love to your friends, give love to your community. Be unselfish, serve people, get involved. Yeah.
I love it. I love your authenticity. I love you being exactly who you are and being open. And I can't thank you enough for being a part of the podcast, sharing yourself here, and also just the difference that you've made in so many people's lives, but specifically my life. And I want to thank you for being that example, being open, being honest, sharing the positive and the negative, and helping me to learn these lessons from you. So thank you so much, Jeff.
My pleasure, Jake. I'm glad I was able to give you that, and I hope I gave your listeners something to think about too.
I know they have. So thank you so much. And if people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
They can Facebook, my website, jeffyalden.com, or they can email me, jeff@jeffyalden.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Peace.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Always, always, always remember to look for the good in the world, because what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it. Please share it with those that can use it, and also rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. That helps us out tremendously. And remember, I choose to focus on the good, and I hope you will too.